show. And what was so cool about you, though, we discovered you like a few months ago. We read up a lot about you, read your blogs, you saw your YouTube channel, and a recurring theme that we've been having with most of our guests is like how people like to break down a lot of stigma in the Middle East using humor. And you yourself, like, you've been doing that for years right now, especially when you look at like being a relationship advisor, talking about sex, talking about like women and being judgmental in our society, and that's like pretty cool. So how did all this start? What was like what initiated everything?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I think, this is so important to have these types of dialogues. And I started, as you read in my blog, 51 Fridays. And in that blog, I documented my dad's journey to marry me off before I was 25, which is like, how the Arab culture sees women over 25, like prehistoric dinosaurs, officially expired, hence the name Expired and Fabulous. And I started off by having this blog that I just talked about my journey, my experiences, my questions, many of which nobody had ever asked before. Like nobody had ever asked why we can't date, or why you should not want to, or if you want to, and if you have the interest, what you should be doing and what you should look out for. So I'm like, we need this. And I knew that it was happening in our community. So I said, well, let me start the dialogue. And in doing so, people started reaching out to me and sharing their story and wanting to tell me about the things they were going through. So we had built this like platform of like rebels and outcasts and misfits that nobody really wanted to talk to in this little community. But it was very private. It was very like a very small knit group of people first. And then when I decided to start dating and I got into this relationship, which was, again, very taboo. Like there's nothing that the Muslim Arab world hates more than the 3Ds. Dating, I think ziyar, and divorce, they just don't like these 3Ds. And it's like, and then here I was doing, it wasn't the divorce part yet, but I was in this position where I was dating and I was, in this relationship. And when I decided to leave, because it had become very, very abusive, he threw my reputation out to everybody. So he told everybody I wasn't a verified V and that I was this and that. And it had exploded in the community because, reputation is everything. And I was in a position where my reputation was completely destroyed, like out there, done. Everybody knew. And, what people don't know, they add. So it's just kept growing and growing and growing. And I had no control over
anything. The story, basically.
Yeah. Oh, they spice. Yeah. Then you have like 10 kids, and you're like, "What odds? I'm such a bad parent," And so I was in this position where it got so big, so much bigger than myself, and it affected my business. It affected the people who would turn to me, who were now my clients. And I was like, well, how do I own this? What do I do now? And that's when I put up a camera and I decided to share my story and tell people my side of what was going on, share the stories of the people who were silenced in the community. And comedy seemed like the best thing to use, because comedy, if you can't laugh about it, then you're going to cry about it, and you need to cry, but you got to have a balance, And so I was doing a lot of fucking crying. So I'm like, can I curse, guys? Can I curse?
Oh, yeah.
100%.
Please do.
Okay.
Please do.
So I'm like...
Definitely,
okay.
please curse.
So I'm
we
in this
encourage
position
it.
where it's like, all these people are like fucking just talking, and I'm like, I want to make something funny out of this. So if you can't fucking cry about it, if you're gonna fucking cry about it, you gotta laugh about it. So I found a balance, and I decided that I would use comedy as a platform to sort of bridge the gap between a world so many people truly don't understand because they don't get to see it or hear it or really understand what's happening at the root, and also share my healing. Comedy was my healing. That's how I healed. And that's how I was able to see myself, see the situation, see my culture and my faith without hating it. Because there was a point I fucking hated it. I hated my culture. I hated the people in it. I hated my faith. I hated the people in it as well. There was so much like anger. And I needed a way to channel that. And so comedy seemed like the best tool to use in order to make people laugh to change,
And I think you're a unique, I don't know, maybe this is just because of the research we've done, but like you're a unique example of someone doing that, because you said it yourself, there's two ways you can go about it. you can completely just mentally break down and cry and feel kind of suffocated, or you can channel that and, you know, laugh about it, and not only laugh about it, try to help others. Because I think there are so many girls who probably have been in situations similar to yours who did not take that route.
Yeah, and I'm sure like even through our experiences growing up in Lebanon, we have met a lot of girls as well that were in similar situations to as you found yourself in, whether it was through relationship, whether it was through going out, or whether it was through having a certain type of social life. And yeah, it's like challenging. And I'm sure like, how did you have like the courage at the time to just go out and put yourself out there? Because I think I read in one of your blogs that you came from quite a conservative family as well.
Absolutely. And you know, you just said it, that what fueled me was the other women going through it. I wasn't alone.
Yeah.
You know, I had heard many women who had resorted to suicide, who had been forced into marriages, who had gone down the road of addiction, who had lost themselves completely because of things like this. And I was like, this is just enough. Like, it's enough already. What the fuck is this? And so I just thought somebody needs to say something, and I'm fucking loudmouth, so I'll do it. And you know, here's the thing. I feel like my family always knew this too. My family always knew I was going to be a big fucking disappointment. They're like, oh, this one's going to be a problem, you know, from the beginning. And it was because
It's usually the last
always
child.
had
By the
questions.
way,
I always had questions. And I just I could never settle on the, oh, well, this is just how things are. Oh, well, this is how things are for women. Oh, well, that's how, you're a woman and you're supposed to do that. Oh, well, he's a man and he can get away with it. And it never settled well with me. And it's interesting because you feel alone in your community because nobody talks about this and nobody says the opinions that sort of, you know, rebuttal whatever the master opinion everywhere, but the common dominant opinion. And so you feel alone. But when I came out and I started talking, I realized I was not alone. There were many other people who had voiced their opinions on the same concerns and were just tired of it, but needed somebody that would be willing to just push down the wall and say it. And I was the one who was, I was willing enough to do it.
And I think
angry
actually
enough, angry enough.
Yeah, angry with enough passion as well and with enough humor.
Angry gets shit done, by the way.
Yeah,
always. Always.
Well, except in this country, but
This country makes things shittier.
But I
Let
think
me
you
tell
have
you though,
actually
even in
one
Lebanon, like I have clients internationally. I've heard clients in Lebanon, the UAE, Abu Dhabi, like Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, all same problem. We are all facing the same thing. People think because like we're here in the States that it's different and we might have it a little bit easier. And to a certain degree, we may, you know, but because we have more freedom where we can say something and it's not like we're going to have issues with necessarily like the government or our family might lose this. That's not going to be the issue. You can speak up, but the community is what makes it hard. And how tight-knit in the tribalism within our culture, that's what makes it very difficult to speak up. So that's universally felt, whether in the States or overseas.
And Faiza, just for context, for anyone who, you know, maybe doesn't understand about the type of things that we're talking about, who is outside of Arab society, what type of things would lead to someone, you know, being shunned in the community or being made fun of or shit being spread like wildfire?
How much time do we have?
We can go.
Wow, yeah.
Especially this topic.
We're here to listen.
You can do anything and get shunned in this community, but I think the common things are dating, premarital shish kebabbing, you know, having a kid out of wedlock, divorce if the divorce is blamed on you, and it'll almost always be blamed on the woman. So, you know, divorce. Being part of the LGBTQ plus community. I mean, I just posted, I started a secret series. I just posted a story where I read somebody who was in the LGBTQ plus community. I lost 3,000 followers overnight because of it. So that just goes to show you there's very little that you need to do to be ostracized in this community, sadly. And I think that's the problem. That's the fucking problem in our community. The quick and easy way they'll abandon you for just simply being different. You know, I think that's a problem.
Yeah, and that ties back to like the issue that we have over here where it's like reputation based, how internationally people's reputations always matters, but I think it's really antagonized and there's so much spotlight put on your reputation in the Arab society in general, and people sometimes tend to act differently in public just so that they can please others and not put their reputation quote unquote at risk. for instance, maybe somebody else, if they had the same influence that you had, might have not posted the thing about the LGBTQ society because they might have been like, oh, I might lose 3,000 followers, or people are going to look at me differently, or this is not as accepting as my other posts. And I think that's a very big problem that we have, and we've spoken about on so many different situations.
I think definitely with reputation, and I think one of the scariest things is people maybe outside looking in don't realize how close we are to our family. Like, honestly, us Arabs, family is everything for us, way more than I think Europeans and people from the West. Like, even, you know, you move out of your house here at what the average age is like 30 when you move out from your parents' house.
Bro, you move out here when you get married.
When you get married, exactly. No.
And there are certain situations as well where you get married and you still live with your parents.
Yeah, that's true.
بعيد الشر.
Yeah, which is, by the way, Joe, I don't know. It might happen, bro. It might happen. But I think that's what's so interesting about you, and the point I was trying to make is that you have the best name on Instagram, Expired and Fabulous, and I think, would you like to give us the context as to why you've labeled yourself Expired and Fabulous?
Oh, well, you know, thank you very much, everyone. You know, just big head, you know. Thank you. You guys are so fucking sweet. Because I am expired. I'm over 25. I'm not married. My dad would always say, this was a common theme in our community, that if you were over 25, as I said, and then you were not married, you were officially considered expired, unmarriageable, not as attractive as the younger women in the community. So I would always tell my dad, I was like, well, I'm going to be expired, but I'll still be fabulous, you know, and I had the hijab on at that time, so I would like flap, you know, with my hijab. And I was very proud of that. I thought, well, all right, that's fine. I don't really see myself as an expiration. And if I'm going to make it my own. I'll own it, you know, which is something I've learned, especially with, just to kind of go back, segue to what you said about reputation. You know, I've learned something in my journey, which is that you can't control your reputation. You have no control over it. No matter what you think, that is the biggest misconception. That's the biggest mind fuck in our culture, that they tell you can control this and you cannot. Because all it takes is one person to say, Wahyat Allah, I've never been able to snap. That was the first time I just did that. Look, I was so into it.
Yeah, it's because you're around other Arabs. We bring it out in you. We bring that aggression out in you.
I think it's Joe's afro.
But you can't control it. You can't. No matter how many times you think you can, and somebody just takes one thing, they say one thing, you're done. That's it.
Yeah.
And if people want to believe it, they'll believe it. And we live in the type of community and the type of society as a world. I mean, look at cancel culture even here. It's the same thing. Cancel. We were the ones who created cancel culture. The Arabs did it, you know.
Back literally BC, like BC, before Christ, we were creating cancel culture.
Before it became mainstream.
Yeah.
Before it became mainstream.
We literally did this, and it's like, it's the biggest mindfuck. That's all I can say. It's the biggest mindfuck, because they tell you can, and you think you walk the straight and narrow path, believing that don't post this, don't say that, don't act like this, don't dress like that, don't dance that way, don't, or that. We tell ourselves this because they tell us other people will talk. But what they don't tell you is they're going to fucking talk anyway. They're going to talk anyway. Yeah. And they're going to want something to talk about.
I guess it's the education you can do from your side and even from our end and everything is just how you yourself perceive the gossip. Like, because it's very tough for you to just be like, you know what, people are talking shit about me, I'm gonna, you know, give them the finger and just move on and whatever. Because whether we like it or not, most of us are insecure. The shit gets to us, especially in such a close-knit society like we have here in Lebanon and with what you grew up in. So it's like, how do you just kind of disassociate yourself from all that gossip and all that bullshit? What can you do?
I think, like, from a personal experience, I think it comes down to like the type of person you are and like the mental strength that you have. Like, you could go two ways when it comes to this, because I've seen people that you also know that chose to, you know what, I'm gonna try to be a people pleaser and I'm gonna try to please everyone and always make my reputation perfect, but then inside they become insecure as fuck. Or you could take the other route where you just be yourself, and as long as you're self-satisfied, you don't care what people think, because you, as you mentioned earlier, people will always talk. And trying to always, that my perception is just do what you do and enjoy it.
Yeah, and I think also, like, just to add on that, like, I will say, it does bother. You know, it bothers. And I think that people have this, like, belief that, oh, it's like, fuck you, done. I'm a human being. You know, I still have emotions, I still have feelings, and I still have my insecurities. You know, these are things I think people should keep to themselves, because I think people use those things against you. And I personally, you know, I have my hard times, but the way that I'm able to lift myself up is because I go through that hardship and I allow myself to process it. I don't run from my emotions the way that we've been taught. We've been taught to push it under the rug, go, keep go. I don't do that. I mean, for people, if anybody thinks that certain negative comments don't bother me, certain ones don't and others do. But the ones that do, I sit with it. I don't let it just brush off and let it go. I literally will take the time to sit with that thought and be like, Faiza, why is this bothering you so much? Like, literally, I'll sit and I'll be like, I can't say the word I'm thinking right now, but I'm like, why does it bother you that they think this about you? And I'd be thinking, starts with an S, okay? Everyone know? It starts with shar, you know? That's all
we can guess.
Okay. So I'm like sitting and I'll sit and I'm like, why does it bother me so much? And it's because deep down inside, we all care. We do care. There's a part of you, and you should want to be in a world where people see you and people can accept you. But I also do have the side where, yes, I do want that, but I also recognize that's not always going to happen. And if I know me enough and I can recognize my own self and what I truly believe, then those things aren't going to bother me at the end of the day. And if it does for a week, a month, 2 months, a year even, I process and I move on. So I think that what I'm trying to stress here is that it's not that I'm just fuck you and done. You know, nobody's like that. It's more so I can be empowered by the things I've become strong about, and I've become strong about them because I've processed, I've found myself in it. Do I really believe that? Do I really agree with that? Do I correlate with those beliefs? No. All right, well then navigate your own way. So it's a process to stop giving a fuck. It's not something that happens overnight at all.
You did mention something previously that you grew up with a hijab, right? And we saw in some videos you've spoken about that. So I know you've spoken about this before, but if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, when was the moment you said, you know what, I'm taking this off and I'm doing me, essentially?
This is always a subject that gets me in so much trouble. And I don't know why. Like, why are we so timid that we can't have a conversation about hijab? It's just become such an encompass of our faith. It's quite sad. I wore hijab when I was very young. It wasn't a choice. I've said this many, many times. This was something that was required of me. It was not only required of me by my family, it was required of me by the Muslim school that I went to as well. So I went to an Islamic institution where you had to, as part of the uniform. And in both forums, I was never told that I had a choice in this. And one of the many misconceptions about our faith is that there's an elimination of choice. You know, and if you eliminate choice from our faith, it doesn't exist. And so again, as I told you, being the kid that just could never just sit on a thought, I just always bothered me. I'm like, well, if I'm not choosing to wear this, then, and everything in our faith is about intention, well, God knows I don't want to wear it. So why am I wearing it? You know? And yet anytime I had those thoughts, it was always push it under, keep on going. And when I was 19 years old, I finally got to a point where I reached my limit and I didn't want to wear hijab anymore. So I decided to educate myself, and in the way that I think Muslims should, which is reading the Holy Quran. And I read Surah Al-Ahzab and Surah Al-Nur, which discuss the only two surahs that discuss hijab. And I realized it was a choice, which they don't tell you. You know, and I realized I in fact had a decision in this. And if I chose not to do it, there were other ways that I can practice modesty. And that modesty was a great many other things besides just a hijab. And I think, as I said, that gets lost. So I recognized I did in fact have a choice. I did in fact go to speak to 2 different sheikhs about this to, you know, kind of just get support. So when I went to go talk to my dad, and I went and I spoke to him, and my dad knew it was true. He did not deny it. He didn't question it. He didn't want the sin of it. And so he said, all right, that's fine, but you're not going to dress like kind of like the way that you want to, like, don't get too westernized about the way you dress, which, you know, that boat sailed. But
boat's at the port.
Hijab is so much, you know, again, I think hijab is beautiful. most of the people in my life, most of the women in my life wear hijab. I'm literally one of the only ones who doesn't. And so I think it's, many people think I have this dislike for it. That's not true at all. I think hijab is beautiful. I think that it is literally, hijabi women are some of the most beautiful women I've ever seen. Again, if it's your choice, that's a beautiful thing. As long as it's your choice, if it's not pressured, guilted, or forced, I think hijab is beautiful. And if it's pressured, guilted, or forced, then I think it loses its beauty, because then it's no longer being done for the right reasons. It's being done for man rather than God. And so I just don't correlate with doing things for people. I do things for God, and so I carry my modesty as I am.
What's interesting is like you took it into your own interpretation, and I think that's the thing that I wanted to ask, like, how do you balance what you actually want from the inside with your faith? Because sometimes certain things in your faith may tell you, well, that's not okay and you should do this and this is how you should be living your life, but how do you set your own interpretation of it?
I think that we don't necessarily, how we choose to practice is very different from interpretation. I think that there's not much to interpret. It's very clear. I just think that people have overcomplicated it. And I think that, as I said, it's Surah Al-Hijab, Surah Al-Nur. People should open it up. They should read it. You shouldn't just read it in Arabic. You should read the context. You should read the English translation. It's there for a reason. And these scholars have actually gone through thorough research to really document this as closely as possible. And as I said, I think that if you have to seek out your own understanding and then how you choose to practice it. In Surah An-Nur, it talks about how if you were to fall short, if a Muslim woman was to fall short and not necessarily practice in the way that it says, then Allah is oft forgiving, most kind, most merciful, right? Why do we forget those things? Why don't they tell us those things? Why don't they give us the option to understand that, in fact, there is a line between finding yourself through this? And I'm not afraid to make mistakes. If it's a sin, if I'm committing a sin, well, then that's between me and God. That's not between me and anybody else. So I see it's not more about, let me interpret it in my own way. It's more of, God has told me I have a choice, and if I choose to follow it this way, while handling myself with the respect and modesty that a hijab, I would be the same way with a hijab on. So if I'm handling myself that same way, and I can keep a man at a distance because I know how to respect myself, am I not acting in accordance as a Muslim woman?
You are. And I think like it goes back to what you said, in the sense that people, especially in our region, I feel, don't actively try to really understand these rules that are set upon them from the older generation.
Not only here, dude, everywhere. Like even in the States, honestly, Faiza, you're one of the few people whom I know, one of the few practicing Muslims who actually read actual religious books. Most of them, they just follow it because of what they've been told.
Yeah, it's assumption.
And we think about, like, for example, this whole part about, what was it? What? Sorry.
In Surah An-Nur?
Surah An-Nur. Like, for example, why is it the first time I've ever heard of it?
I don't think either of us in this room has.
Why?
But maybe
we're not
the best example.
Yeah.
We
live in a predominantly Muslim country, and it seems like it's one of the very important points to be made across. Why isn't it made?
And to go deeper than that, like you have like countries, especially like Saudi Arabia, for instance, where the role of the woman is not that important, and where the male has a lot of say in like how society is supposed to function. So I'm sure maybe a lot of women in Saudi Arabia don't know that hijab is a choice. It's not something that must be bestowed on them.
And it's become such
Faiza,
a conversation that if you even say, here's the thing, that even if you say it's a choice, they attack you for saying that. It's as if you've said something wrong. And to me, that it's very scary in the sense to see that reality check, that why would you not want anyone to believe we live in a faith that says, if you choose not to do this, there are many other things I need you to do. Many other things. Like, don't gossip. Don't destroy reputations. Don't do this. There's plenty of other things that's not followed. And so you're going to encompass it, because I'm a woman, you're going to encompass it dilute it down to a hijab. And that if I don't do that, then I'm no longer a decent Muslim woman. I think that there's a level that sounds a lot like people who want to control. And there is no control in our faith. And if you have, you can't have the two C's contradicting each other. Like, you can't do that. You can't have control and then have this freedom, this abundance of freedom for people. You just can't do that. It just contradicts itself. Islam is, if it's either free or it's repressive. That's it. There's not one way or another.
There's no in between.
There's no in between.
And I think that what people, and it's like Islam, I say this all the time, Islam was birthed to give women freedom. I mean, we were talking about a time when females, babies were buried because nobody wanted to fucking deal with the problem. And so you had women that didn't have choice. Many women went to the Prophet Muhammad to seek his protection because they didn't have that. So what does that tell you? This was a faith that was very open, very understanding, very protective of women, of their expression. So I think that when I stopped hating my faith because I educated myself. Because had I stayed in what the Muslims were telling me, I would have hated my faith. And I think a lot of people never give me credit, because many people tell me, you're not Muslim, you're the Dajjal, which shit.
You're not the Muslim that they want you to be. You're not the Muslim that they market Islam.
And I say it all the time. I'm like, listen, if what you define as a Muslim is so distorted. You have the same perception of a Muslim that the American public does, that they put on the TV. You have that perception. I don't have that perception of my faith. I come from a faith that is open. I come from a faith that is understanding. I come from a faith that is protective, like that's not looked down, not degrading, not murderous, nothing like that. So I don't practice that faith, and I don't practice it because I read the Quran. That's what we should be doing.
I have an interesting situation for you. Imagine that you were not raised, because the fact that you were raised in the States and you had like the States market itself of being more open-minded and a liberal country and free speech. What if your childhood, and what if you spend most of your years, let's say, in a conservative Arab country? So let's say Saudi Arabia or Dubai, Qatar, or regardless, Jordan, even Lebanon, with the conservative family that you had. So your entire surroundings, both at home and outside, was very conservative. Do you think that you would have rebelled the same way that you rebelled right now and educated yourself in the same way, or do you think that you might have been more hypnotized by society?
Well, I believe we are who we are, so I think of course I would have gone ahead and probably done the very same thing, because I think that what many people don't understand is that here in the States it was very much the same. I mean, my dad would say, this is and here's Palestine, out there's America, but in here's Palestine, and what you follow is in here. That's what you follow. When I would go out, I mean, I would still carry that with me. And although I may not have been in an Arab country, here was in an Arab country. Here was stuck at home. Here was stuck into the cultural mindset. So even when I went out, I always felt like the Little Mermaid, I want to be part of their world. Like, I thought that. Like, I would walk out and be like, oh, look at all this. Isn't it beautiful? But
I'm glad you didn't choose Aladdin, by the way. Yeah, I'm glad you went with the Little Mermaid.
Listen, I couldn't. So I feel like, even if I would have been and I was actually raised in Palestine for 5 years. Like, I was when we were here in the States, we went straight overseas. I was there for 5 years, came here. So that mindset was although I was much younger, it was still very deeply rooted. When my aunt and everything, who was like a second mother to me, Allah yarhamha, like, she was somebody who would constantly drill these things in. So I think I would have still done that, because I was still probably living the same exact life, just in a very different place. Now, granted, I do understand that living in the Middle East is a very different perspective, but if I believe that we're all created as we are, and I probably still would have done that. I don't know if I would have survived it, but I would have done it.
That's another topic.
Well, survive and Middle East in the same sentence is a tough sell. It's a tough sell. But I think going on to your point, I mean, it is definitely opening up here. I think Lebanon, especially as a country in itself, is, I would say, probably the most liberal Arab country in terms of morals. I'm not saying in terms of how it functions. I'm saying in terms of how we think.
Yes.
And like in terms of like the woman's role in society, even though it's not great, but it's like better than other places.
I think definitely. And I think you were touching on a point, and this is a point that always fucking pisses me off, is how the Middle East is portrayed in the West. This is something I've never understood. Number one, when you say Middle East in the West, the first thing that pops up into someone's head.
Oh, do you ride on camels? Do you carry AK-47?
Well, that and it's Middle East Islam. It's Middle Eastern Islam.
Extremism, extreme form of Islam.
Yeah, an extreme form of Islam, like kind of like under Sharia law, and it's not always the case. Like it's really not always the case. People are always shocked when we say we have Christians here. Like everyone in this room is half Christian. Sorry, Joe's full Christian and we're half Christian. So like it's always
only on paper though.
On paper, yeah, I know, but it's still like this big shock, and that's something when I go abroad, I'm always trying to tell people, like, don't just view the region through our religion. Like we're way more than that. We have a amazing culture and a rich history and a diversity that people don't really tend to see in the media.
Media, and also like in movies as well, like in most mainstream movies, the way that the Middle East is portrayed is like a fucking war zone.
Dude, don't even get me started on American Sniper.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's one of the best movies.
But you know, here's the thing, guys. I mean, it's like here. This is also the importance of us as in our culture, and to encourage art, to encourage the things that are not always encouraged, that need and can put us in a position for the world to see us differently, to see the culture in the way we know it. I mean, we can't expect the world to know our culture and to know how to portray us when we ourselves are not putting ourselves in a position to make ourselves heard, to make an image that's there that we have claimed, you know? I mean, we also need to take I mean, that's what I love about, especially on social media. There's so many Musrab artists, whether even Arab, whether you're Muslim or not, there's our culture is all being shown in a way that I think can better us and how we're perceived in the world, and yeah, put us in a different limelight. I mean, we know our culture. It's on us to show it. It really is.
One of the long-term views that we have with this podcast is to eventually, in the long term, to have like a very big platform where we just basically try to show the world like all this concept and stigma behind Middle Eastern culture is not fucking true, and that there's way more to us than, as Ryan was saying and as you're all saying, war and extremism and all that shit, and that we're actually cool people.
Yeah, dude, we're fucking funny.
Yeah.
Arabs are the fucking... I'm not saying it because we're Arab, but we are a really funny
Very
group
funny
of people. And we're very high in temperament, and
we're just very emotional.
We're loud, and we gesticulate a lot with our hands, and we're funny. Like we're
like Italians. We're like Italians.
We're like Italian.
Yeah,
Mediterranean.
that's how we get along. That's why so many people never think, like with my mom being Italian, people thought the culture conflict would have been so different. It wasn't. It was the same. You walk into a room, it's like a fucking chaos. It's chaos. So but like I said, it's on us. It's on us to show our culture. That's what I love about you doing this podcast. The comedians out there, the artists out there, the DJs, the belly dancers, everybody.
Even your platform as well.
Listen, I can't talk about myself. You have to do this.
we will talk about you. We will throw compliments your way. And another thing I really wanted to touch on was so I just wanted to know, because you grew up in Chicago. How long have you been in Chicago?
I was in Chicago decades.
Decades. Okay. So as a Musrab, which you like to
refer to yourself.
Yeah, as Muslim Arabs. How is it like? What's the dating scene like there? Like, do you specifically look for Arab guys, Muslim guys, or is it just, more whatever?
Listen,
you boys learned nothing.
Let me tell the scene is stupid. Okay, it's a whole bunch of stupid. That's what the scene is. The scene is what I would call desolate. I think that there is so many issues with our culture in this community that women have actually been pushing Musrab guys away. They don't want anything to do with them. I mean, I have dated out of the culture. I've been very public about this, and I think that it's more about personally finding someone you connect with. And I think it's important to find somebody that you connect with spiritually, find somebody you connect with personally, that you're compatible with. Compatibility for women in our culture is very hard, because you have women who have been so silenced, who have been second to their brothers, to their cousins, to every male in their family. So at the point when they meet an Arab guy who is, and this is what oftentimes happens, is not every Arab guy in this community, but what oftentimes happens is these are mamas, like not, I don't call them mama's boys because there's nothing wrong with mama's boys. It's umbilical boys, guys who are still on the umbilical cord, you know, like that's an umbilical boy is a problem. And he, like, that's what you find, umbilical boys that are, well, do this with my mom. My mom is patient about this. My mom does this. My mom does that. This. So then the women get very, it's just unattractive. So
they want to date their mom, essentially.
Yeah.
They want to marry their mom. They want to groom the woman that they're seeing into their mother.
absolutely.
I think we've definitely seen that. I think we've definitely seen that over here.
I mean, it's like, let's be honest, our culture is very, I love us, but our culture is very patriarchal. It's a culture run by men. It is a culture that does cater to men. Guys can get away with things girls can't. So the disgust for many Muslim women and Arab women in general have at times towards Arab men, it's sort of founded, it's understandable. And that's with all due respect, because that's not every Arab man. Just like there's stigmas about Arab women, you know, and some are very true, you know.
Some are too accurate.
We have tempers, I will say. But it's not, we have a lot of healing to do as a people. I can't say that enough. And let me tell you, most of my clients are Muslim. Okay, most of my clients are Muslim, most of my clients are Arab, both male, female, whether, you know, doesn't matter their sexual orientation. And the deepest issues I see are the cultural issues. A deep need to find their identity balance between where they are here in the States and the freedom and wanting to be themselves and express themselves as they are, and then the culture that says, no, you've got to be A, B, C, D, E, F, G, you know? So the dating scene it's complicated for everybody. I can say that. Yeah,
And it's also like,
complicated.
we also talk about this a lot, like the double standards when it comes to dating in the Arab society, whether it's like the guy always getting preferential treatment, and not necessarily just with dating, but like I've seen this with some friends and people that I know, just, oh, you're a guy, you can go study abroad for university, whereas the girl can't go study abroad for university. And there are so many other situations I can bring up, and I'm sure you being a relationship advisor, I'm sure you've have a lot of clients who probably told you about these types of double standard
I've
stories.
personally dealt with it. I know many others who have. Yes, I mean it's a fact, guys. It's a fact.
Yeah,
I mean, guys, there's a double
I'll
standard.
see how parents like treat their kids. For instance, when it comes to dating, like there would be like a brother and a sister that are like 1 or 2 years apart. With the brother, they'd be like, "Oh, you should go out. It's your time to date. You should have the woman running all over you and blah blah." But the sister, they're like, "You can't even date before marriage."
leave the country.
Yeah, and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And it's like,
And I think you mentioned that with family and also in with friends and amongst society. There's the term. So if a guy's going out, if a guy's getting laid every single night, if a guy's seen with 20 girls at a club, he's basically called a jagal.
Gigolo.
You know what a jagal means? So he's a fucking jagal, right?
a cool guy, basically.
A cool guy,
yeah.
a player, a man of the night. Can I say a man of the night? I don't know.
Stud, I think. Is what
Stud, yeah,
right.
yeah. Stud muffin, yeah. So, and then you take that exact same scenario and you twist it and you put the girl in that situation. And obviously, we've all been to school here in Lebanon. We know what happens when the girl.
Sharmuta.
Okay, I'm so glad you guys just said sharmuta because I've wanted to say it this whole fucking time and I didn't think I could.
No, we said you could curse.
say
Guys,
curse.
The Middle East
Say
is
it
so
5 times for good luck.
like you guys love and hate me over there. It's like sometimes when people want me to say it, they don't want me to say it. I don't know, but it's like, let me tell you, is there a male version of sharmuta? Is there?
Sharmut.
Sharmut.
But
yeah.
it's
Well,
not
sharmut, yeah.
as. It's not as.
The connotation behind sharmut is a lot more playful.
Yeah.
Like, sharmut and
Yeah.
It's like when you call somebody a man whore.
yeah.
Yeah, like
Basically.
let me tell you this. It's what my ex did to me was common because that's how the culture is. If you go out and throw a man's reputation, it was found out that Hussein was dating, it's gonna be like, I wonder who he was dating. I wonder if they did anything, you know? They have big conversations. They're gonna have big conversations. Everyone's gonna like have big times to tell us everything. Was it good or bad? You know, it's the conversation. Fun times. If a girl does it, it's a problem. It's a big problem. She's a sharmuta. She's a whore. She comes from an immoral family. That's what my ex did. He knew he could do that. And guys like him know they can do that towards women because the reputation falls on the women. It doesn't fall on the men. It's not if he goes off and does something, the family's reputation is destroyed unless you were caught maybe, and you better have been caught. They better have caught you, walked in and saw you doing the act to believe it even happened, because guys get so much freedom in this. You know, that's the truth. The whole thing about witnesses, men don't need witnesses. I mean, women don't need witnesses, the men do. You better be solid, have solid proof, tell us this happened. For a woman, you can go throw it out, anyone will believe anything. That's the mistreatment of women in our culture. That it's disgusting. It really is, and it's unfair. And it's universally throughout the Arab world. Although I will say, in Lebanon, what I love is how progressive Lebanon is. I mean, you guys have your way to go, but in the Middle East, you're a hell of a lot further than anybody else.
No, I'd agree.
We're like the fucking Cancun of the Middle East.
For now.
Yeah.
I think that Lebanese women have always been the women who have fought hardest for a voice to be heard, and they were the trailblazers in many ways. And I think that, you know, and that's great, but as the Arab world, as the culture, we need men to stop fucking standing in our way and speak up and say, yes, this is happening. This is because guys deny this. I mean, you see it also all over social media. And then anytime I post a video, tell me where does this happen? It's always one fucking guy that has to pop up.
Give me one example, Habibti. Then you give them one example. It's like, all right, give me 4 examples, Habibti.
It's always like, I'll give you 12. And it's like, sir, you're not even a woman. What are you talking about? Like, where did you come from? You know? And then sadly, you have the women who see themselves through the eyes of men, because the culture has been so deeply rooted here that they're the enemies of us as well, because they become any woman who wants to speak freely, who wants to be progressive, who wants to conform, who wants to just be her own self. Then you have those women backing those men. So we need the men to stop doing it and giving voices, because if you do it, then the women who sadly are mind fucked by this are going to continuously be a problem as well. But men need to speak up about it and say that this is true.
Tough. Which is tough because Arab men in general, and I will generalize here, but Arab men, like, we're fucking experts on everything. Like, have you ever met like an Arab guy who does not know how to do something?
Never.
You know what I mean?
He does not. He knows I know everything.
I know. The table is broken.
Bro, the only thing that they know,
I will fix. No problem.
Arab men, the only thing that they know how to do is to say that I know everything.
Yeah.
Like, that's the only thing.
There's not a problem. Wallah, that is so true. Even if it's something as like a woman, like you have your period. Let me tell you, I know how to make beds. Hold on. I'm gonna tell you, I get the room and
I make you hibiscus tea and I mix it in with the shy of the nectar of God, and we make it's ridiculous. It's very true. What type of things do you as a relationship advisor, as a counselor, as an expert, what type of things can you say to help educate people and get them out of this kind of thinking?
Oh, listen, fucking be Beyonce. Listen for a moment, you know.
That's it. Just be Beyonce. Okay, that's good advice.
Easy.
That's good advice.
No, you gotta listen. You have got to just open your ears and stop thinking that your experience is a universal experience. I mean, there are other people who have hardships, and the sad part is the reason it's so like mind-blowing to so many people to think there's people in the LGBTQ plus community, there's people who are women with voices, and there's women with all of this is such a earthquake eruption for everybody, because those voices have never been heard. They haven't been able to be heard. They haven't been able to talk. They haven't been able to raise their voices. So at that point, you should listen. Listen to what they're saying. Listen for a moment. Put yourself in the back seat and say, maybe get off the hubris, on your high horse. Because wallah, Arabs treat their horses better than they treat their people. It's like, think about the fact that it's like, listen to what's going on. Hear the different perspectives. Hear the journeys of what's happening. Because if you're not experiencing it, why are you talking about it? There are so many men that come to talk about women's issues when they're not women. There are so many. No, I'm serious. Like, coming to talk. It's like, you're not a woman. Why don't you listen to what the women are saying? Why don't you listen to what's happening?
Because I know the uterus better than the woman knows the uterus. That is how it is,
I show you the uterus.
That's all you need to show. Show a video of the Arab men in a room whenever a woman says something. Look at their faces like, they don't have to say anything. You just see their faces say, oh, I know better. I'm going to say it after them. It's like, shut up and listen to what's happening here, because they're very blind to what's happening. And I mean, we see it, we know what's going on. This is why people like you and I connect, and it's like, that's what we need more of. Just listen, fucking listen to what's happening.
And I think
Educate
like this is a
yourself.
generational thing. Like I think now, like with the innovation of the internet and stuff, people's voices are being heard more. People are like the mass populations are being more aware of what's going on. And I think like when we become older and when our kids are our age, I think obviously we're still gonna have certain issues with our society when it comes to this, but I think like the role of the woman in society will be, especially in the Arab society, is going to be way different than it is now. And you could see it like over the past 10 years, how many more women have become vocal about talking about so many issues that 10, 15 years ago would have been so much more like taboo and looked down upon and frowned upon, and they would have been like completely exiled from society. And now it's like different. Like 15 years ago, 20 years ago, a girl like Faiza wouldn't have had the platform to even go and talk and speak what's on her mind and gain like a following.
It's about choice. It's not about
Yes.
pressure. It's not about conforming, and just be respectful of that. And I think what's going to be important for something like this is when you come here and you give us your Middle Eastern tour and you go country through country and you start educating. And I think we can all get on board with something like that, because I think we need.
Yeah, that's what we need.
That's what we need. We need
We do,
more
no,
voices.
it is. It's so
Education.
needed. Let me tell you. Like I will occasionally, like with clients, sometimes once a week, twice a week. It got to twice a week with COVID, just because so many people were struggling. But we would do these private Zoom courses where we would sit and talk about the subjects that many people's families and their community will not talk about. That we could just feel safe to do it privately rather than on an Instagram Live or anything where people are going to be bombarding with negative comments, sidetracking people. And I've had a lot of people overseas that you just realize how important it is that we start having these conversations. We can save lives. Wallah, we could save lives. We can save people's mental health. Because mental health is not talked about. And people struggle mentally in the Middle East. People struggle here mentally. People struggle over there mentally. Like, people are struggling. So I think that we all need to get on board with loving each other enough to want to see us further our lives individually so that we could do it collectively as a people, right? That's what's needed. People to do the individual work so that we could collectively do greater things as the Arab world. Look how divided the Arab world is even. Look, it's not just, I mean, it's sad where we're at as a people, as a sex. Like, it's just sad. It's sad where we're at, and we could do better. And we can do better. I believe we will. I know we will. This is the generation that's going to change so much. We're already doing it. We really are.
Inshallah.
I agree.
Inshallah.
Inshallah, yeah, inshallah.
Yeah.
I think we're all looking forward to the day you come to Lebanon.
Likewise.
We meet.
Yeah,
we introduce you to our friends.
Yes.
we'll party if that's an
We'll
option.
party.
Okay, we bought it.
Because you know this.
We can party.
We'll party.
big
Party.
time.
You know, it's true what they say. Nobody parties like Arabs, man. That's a fact. I
Yeah.
think.
Oh, there's so
So
many
I-
beautiful things about our culture that I think is beautiful. And keeping traditions alive is important. We can conform, but we have to also keep our traditions alive. That's super important.
You said keeping traditions alive. How do you? I want to be like so careful how I say this, but how do you not become whitewashed while living in America? So, and I don't know if that's a very critical term, but like, how do you keep that? Yeah, like the Arab identity, because when you go outside of your door, you're in the U.S. and everything is different, and there's not kind of anything close to your culture out there. So how do you keep that? Yeah, that identity.
Keeping your identity is hard anywhere you go. Let me tell you. I just think that it's about finding traditions you align with, and what you're balanced with, what you're comfortable with, and keeping to those. Let me tell you, there are many things here in the States the Arab world can learn a lot from. And there are many things that the American world can learn a lot from the Arab
Can
world
learn,
on.
yeah.
Like, we can learn a lot from family structure. We could but that, there's a lot of things the Arab world can learn from here as well. And one of those is that balance, finding a balance. I mean, we're not very good at that either, but finding a balance. That's what I do. I mean, we have our community, we have our, and if you come, I always say this to people, especially for clients who transition overseas, coming to the States. That's a hard transition, and I'll tell them, like, if you just keep up with your prayers as you would over, keep up with your prayers, go to the community, get involved. Turn the holidays into your own Arab flair. Add your own Algerian, Tunisian, Moroccan, Lebanese, like add your own flair to things. Keep your culture alive, you know, because if you lose your identity, then you lose yourself. So for me, I find what's my balance. I think I have a very fair balance between the two.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
I wanted to say amen, but it felt out of place with the whole like Muslim Middle Eastern conversation. But yeah, I guess amen. Faiza, look, you're so much fun to talk to. The only negative here was how shitty the internet has been, and that we can't do this in person, because I feel like you're the perfect type of guest to have in person.
Yeah, like I feel
and
your
to really
energy
dig
would like
deeper.
radiate around the room, and we'll like.
So hopefully there will come a
There
day
will
where
come
we
a
can
day.
do this in person,
Inshallah.
and we can really
Inshallah.
delve
Yes,
into it.
that'll
Inshallah,
happen.
hopefully.
It
And
was
thank you so much.
Yeah.
Honestly, you've been great.
Pleasure. You guys are amazing. Keep up the good work, and yeah.
Thank
Let's
you,
all
Faiza.
applause. Everyone applause.
you.
We live for the applause, like Lady Gaga.